Hello and good morning, everyone joining on this webinar. We are extremely, excited today to address one of the top of mind topic for organization, which is how to better control your operational technology environment and cyber risk by getting ready for this new directive coming from the EU called NIS2, Network Information Security version 2. Today, I will be assisted with two of my highly respected colleagues, Michelle, who is leading within the customer experience organization within the Cisco, the services aspect of the OT environment, and Andrew McPhee, who is a subject matter expert on the OT environment as well, right? In terms of the agenda, in terms of the theme that we want to cover today, we try to articulate as follows. So first of all, we will talk about why. It's always important to understand, the why we are doing things, because the human needs to understand, why doing something and how to act upon. Specifically, what are the requirements associated to this new directive? And we will see how to better, protect industrial environments to ensure, the NIS compliance as much as we can. And we're gonna finish with what's gonna be the journey, in terms of the project to be NIS2 compliant. So, starting by the why, I think there is, it is evident, it is obvious that the threat landscape has completely changed for the past few years, right? So that means I will not go through, all the different type of technique, tactic, and procedures, the TTPs, but this is putting a huge pressure on the organization as we get in a digitized world, right? So, and I think we as a continent, we as a European Union, we decided, the different member states decided all together under, the drive of the European Union, to address this risk, right? And actually, we have been, I've put this quote because they are very, for me, they resonate very well. The two quotes from Bart Grothaus, is a member of the European Parliament, and he said, we must strengthen the cybersecurity by providing the tools and handling incident accordingly, together. And I think this is a big word that we are really, which is really part of the directive. We cannot stop all the cybercrime, but we can protect ourselves by getting ready for it. So this is all about what the NIS2 is about. So we don't have, enough time, obviously, in a 1 hour to get into all the articles of the directives in the subsection and the paragraph. But I just wanted to call out a couple of things. First, NIS2, it is an evolution of NIS1, which came into forces in 2016. And one of the main differences is the size, the scope of the company being targeted, I would say. So we have been drastically increasing, the number of verticals, the number of organizations being subject to this directive. You see on the slide, I mean, there is a 350,000 organization that we think, coming from a study that we conduct from a radar GRP, which going to be entitled to this directive. In terms of the date, extremely important. The regulation, the directive, will get into forces into 2024. The clock is ticking, right? And this is tomorrow. So what this means? That means the EU publish the directive, the document about the directive, and then each of the member states of the EU needs to transpose in the local law this directive. I don't know what's going to be in this in the law in Italy, in Spain, or in France, but they will get all the input and they will write a document based on the directive. Compared to the NIS1 and similarly to, a GDPR for the data privacy, there are two things very important. The first one is, if you don't follow the law, there will be some financial fines, financial penalties that company can be subject to, right? You see, it's up to 2% of the global revenue and 7 million euros minimum. It is an indication. Again, I'm not saying that it's going to be there in a different member state, but it is indication. And there are also personal liability for the management in case of non-compliances with the law, right? So in terms of also in terms of the breakdown, in terms of what we need to care about in a directive, and like we say in the cybersecurity, we have we say quite often this is a matter of a technology, it is a matter of processes, and it is a matter of people. And similarly, in NIS2 you see these three components, this triangle, right? Risk analysis, management, how we handle incident, and how we report incident. So everything related to the policies and procedures. From the technical standpoint, obviously we leverage what's going on in the industry in terms of technology transition, market transition from the technology standpoint. So implementing the zero trust principles, adding additional security layers, implementing multi-factor authentication, leveraging the cryptography obviously, and so on and so forth. And one very important as well aspect, this is and this is all over the world, and also across different regulation that we have, it is a supply chain security. Remember what happened in 2022 in December. Everybody in the IT industry, in the OT industry, they were looking at this famous Apache library called Log4j, which was an open source library used in most of the computers and servers to log information. And guess what? There was a flaw in this library which caused a lot of issues. So, and then it was kind of a waking call, saying, okay, we need to address properly the supply chain security. And last but not least, obviously, the education is extremely important. So this, you see in the article, 21 of the directive. This is a summary of what we're going to have. So as I said, NIS2 has teeth, right? Teeth because of, as I said, a financial implication, the management implication as well. And by the way, you see, the Slido, which got launched as I speak. So please make sure, I mean, to answer the question and to the poll. Yes, so I mean, management liability, financial implication, and what is very important as well, it is the way we report cyber incidents. So organization, they have, I mean, 24 hours to report an incident. They have 72 hours to follow, to follow up with a report, and the final reporting is in about 1 month, right? And again, the financial penalties. So it is extremely serious. We need to be, we need to tackle, I mean, this in a most disciplined manner. And this is what, I mean, we are running also this webinar and showing you how you can rely, you can count on the Cisco to help you on the different front from the technology standpoint, but also from the services standpoint. Now, without further, before hand it over to my colleague, I put also this slide. I think this is, we spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, effort, and thanks to my colleagues, I mean, to write this this white paper in terms of who is in scope, what are the sanction regime, what are the requirements, and how we can comply. So you've got the URL on the bottom of this slide. Feel free to consume at your leisure, I mean, this white paper, and obviously, I mean, get back to us if you need any information. So now it is time to deep a little bit to deep dive into the technologies specifically, and this is why I'm gonna hand it over to my colleague Andy. Andy, over to you.
Thanks, Eric. So I'm going to talk to you about NIS2 from a technical perspective. You know, what is it that Cisco can do in order to help you comply with NIS2? And NIS2, it's all about managing your risk. And if we look at the way networks are architected in the past, you had this traditional kind of DMZ layer, where the OT was a very distinct thing within the network. And then everything outside of that was IT, cloud, internet, but they never really interacted. So you just really had to focus on protecting that perimeter. And that is kind of where we are today with a lot of our deployments. But what we've seen is, well, we can introduce risk to that OT layer with a kind of lack of supply chain security. The more and more of these machines that get installed in this network without any sort of enforcement of the components that get used, some of these holes start to appear. Are they using unmanaged switches? Do we trust those switches within those environments? Are they putting remote access gateways, and our vendors are coming in over cellular networks that we didn't even know were there, and we have our own remote access tools that we would like to use and mandate. We have then more and more connectivity to the cloud. We talked about this for probably many years now, but the evolving perimeter of an OT network, that traditional IDMZ is no longer the boundary of OT. There's been much more cloud adoption. There's much more services reaching out to the internet. And a lot of people are starting to move their data centers from an on-prem environment into a cloud environment. It's not a full lift and shift because you still need to be able to disconnect from cloud and be able to run the core of the business. But there's a lot of services that we're seeing that are cloud dependent, even if they don't realize it. And then, of course, what I mentioned, that remote access. The pandemic accelerated the number of remote employees we have, but we've always had vendors that we needed help with to come into our environments and maybe do some maintenance, some patching, troubleshooting. And, you know, a lot of times we would have flown them on site, given them a laptop and says, this is your laptop now that you can do work. But that's no longer really happening. And we got more and more remote users coming in. So with NIS2 being a risk management standard, your risk surface is increasing, and we need to deal with that. So from a supply chain perspective, I mentioned a few different technologies. There's cloud connectivity. There's now, you know, wireless networks. There's getting invisibility into the network to understand what's going on. And from a security perspective, we do this a lot, both in IT and OT, is we react to a capability there and then. So we need visibility of our OT network, so we go and find a visibility solution, and we go start putting additional hardware sensors in the network and creating the span network. And it's like, great, I understand this part of my network. And then we put in more machines and more lines and build out the network further. And then we need to get more sensors and more visibility, and that needs to now grow and scale. Same with remote access gateways. We get remote access into our environment. Sometimes we put remote access gateways closer to the devices so we can get access beyond the NAT boundary. Other times we expose devices through NAT boundaries, but we build a remote access solution. And then again, more machines come in and more networks come in, and now we have to make a decision: do we put in more remote access gateways? And the list goes on. And as your organization grows, as your technology footprint grows, it becomes very difficult to manage all of this and scale. And you end up with a lot of point product solutions that when you try to bring together into single cohesive security architecture, it becomes quite complex. And going from a kind of lab eval environment into a production environment becomes very difficult. So if we take that kind of first step of supply chain security, or building off a secure set of components, this is where the Cisco industrial portfolio comes in. So NIS2 is relatively new. It's what keeping folks awake at night, and it's a new shiny thing that is now implemented findable offenses if you don't follow this thing. But there has been other compliance standards in the past that's helped us secure our industrial networks. And the most popular one that I see worldwide is IEC 62443, which is a great set of standards to give you a framework on how to be secure in your industrial environment. And there's 4 parts to it, but the only part I'm going to talk about is 62443-4, and that has 2 parts to it, 4-1 and 4-2. And the reason why they are important is they build the foundation for secure components within an industrial network or within a system, because 62443 is a system level compliance standard. And what 4-1 is asking you to do is to buy components that have undergone a secure development lifecycle. So the vendor that you're purchasing the software from has development practices that follow the 62443 standards and has that certification of compliance to them. We have what's known as the Cisco Secure Development Lifecycle, CSDL, and that is certified to IEC 62443 4-1. So any of the software that you get from us here in Cisco in our IoT business unit is certified to that standard, and that software has been written to a compliance standard spec. But then there's also the hardware components, and Cisco do obviously both hardware and software. And that portfolio that you see in front of you on the screen, some of these switches have that compliance standard already. Other parts of this portfolio are currently undergoing, and you'll see that coming up in the coming months. But 4-2 is secure components for industrial networks. So when you are, say, purchasing a system or making a system be compliant, the more secured components you have in your environment, the easier it is to get those security levels that you're asking for in 62443. And I think what you'll find with the NIS2 standard is they would leverage the work that 62443 has already done in order for you to meet those compliance. 62443 won't go away just because NIS2 now is in the mix. It'll be very much, if you're leveraging this standard already, you will more than likely be compliant, plus standard reporting that NIS2 asks for. Now, if we look at then other risks within that environment, especially within the OT network, I've already touched upon a couple of them, but typically you'll have limited visibility into the OT assets. So again, if we're talking from a risk management point of view, well, how risky is my OT environment? We need to understand what's there to really understand that, because we need to know if those OT assets are vulnerable. We can make a safe assumption to say that they are. You probably know you're running older machines, older versions of Windows, old PLC firmware, and the vulnerabilities of these devices are known. It's not difficult to go and look up what vulnerabilities exist on these devices, but more than likely you haven't had the opportunity to patch them, so the vulnerabilities still exist. That's what visibility gives you. What vulnerabilities actually exist in my network? And then which one of these devices are communicating to the internet? I know I've enabled cloud connectivity, but I need a way to know, well, which devices are communicating to the internet? Are they communicating to known resources? Are they escaping out of a channel that I didn't even know about? Sometimes we have this IT-OT divide in which an IT network puts in that perimeter security, and they're monitoring that internet connectivity. But then suddenly you start seeing in your visibility tool that there's other internet-bound traffic that we weren't aware of. And now it's time to investigate, well, did the on-site team bypass the IT security tools because we were being too restrictive? And then, malware is still an issue. If I do get malware in my environment through a backdoor or someone bringing in a rogue laptop that they didn't know had malware on it, can I detect that? Can I see what's actually happening in my OT? And can I detect that there may be a system that is compromised before further damage can be done so I can react to it? And this all becomes easy because we typically have a flat OT network without any really clear security controls in place. So what CyberVision does, Cisco CyberVision is our visibility tool. It's our OT visibility tool. It's built specific for understanding ICS protocols. Is it gives you that asset inventory within the OT infrastructure itself. So those switches that I showed and those routers that I showed a couple of slides ago have the ability to host compute on it. It's called IOX. It's essentially just Docker containers. And the CyberVision sensor is a container that sits on the networking infrastructure itself and does deep packet inspection within your existing infrastructure. So you don't need to copy that traffic off the switch. As you're using those existing switches, we can do DPI on that and tell you, well, what is on your network? What are those things communicating to? Are the things they're communicating to, you can decide if that's normal, like are these two production lines that are communicating, should they be communicating, or was there a config error or something worse? Are things going to the internet? And then how vulnerable are those devices? So every asset in your network gets a risk score based on the vulnerabilities we know about that device, the communication that it's doing, the impact score of the group, because we can build, as you can see in that assets communication panel, we can group your devices into processes, or if you want to do it based on subnet or criticality of device, it's really up to you. It's very flexible. And then you say, this is the impact score of this group. The higher the impact score, the higher the risk score is going to be. And when you see then your 1,000 devices, 2,000 devices, 10,000 devices that you have within these environments, you can start to prioritize action based on the risk of that device. We also then have a snort sensor. So if you're familiar with our snort IDS IPS engine that we typically use in firewalls or our umbrella platform, or more of our, say, traditional security policy enforcement points, we can use snort in an IDS mode, so you can see those malicious signatures being triggered within the OT environment, but completely passively. So we're not getting in the way of this critical traffic, putting any latency or jitter. Everything is copied just like it would be in a kind of span-based network, but you're giving it to the compute platform within the switch as well. So there's no additional hardware to manage, all on top of these, secure components. And then NIS2 also asks for preventative measures. It's not just understanding your cyber risk, but how do you minimize the risk of that environment and take action? And they actually call on trying to use some zero trust principles. Well, I mentioned before that CyberVision does this, some people call it virtual segmentation, where you divide your network into a series of zones and then you visualize the conduits between them. And the idea of a virtual segmentation technology that some are calling for is rather than put policy between the two zones, I can visualize what is happening and then I can react to things that I don't like. Well, what we can do is we can take that concept and actually push it into the network to say, well, let's not only visualize what we don't want to see, but let's actually just block what we don't want to see. And we do that with Identity Services Engine. So Identity Services Engine is our policy enforcement tool for networking infrastructure. So the switches become your policy enforcement points. Again, we're trying to avoid the need for additional products or additional point hardware to do one thing on your network. You don't need to go and take a security box and say, well, for everywhere I want to do security, I need a new box. The existing boxes in your environment can do a lot of things. Get the most out of what you already have, and then build point products on top of that if your existing infrastructure can't meet it. So if you take the switch, for example, I'll take this IE3400 that we can do. We can get the visibility through Cisco CyberVision to help you understand your risk. And then we can push policy back into those same boxes to enforce the relationships between different zones in our network. So if there is a segment of your network that has been compromised, you're reducing the blast radius to go into other parts of that network and minimizing the lateral spread of that attack. So if we look at how CyberVision helps with that NIS2 compliance, the NIS2 has 10 kind of security measures. We'll go through kind of 5 of them here to map quite well with CyberVision. That risk analysis that you need to do, that understanding of how risky is my environment, well, that's where our risk scores come in CyberVision. And we can also generate the security posture report. So if you want to see this in a report standard, you can do so. And as I'm going through this, you'll see a slider on the screen, and I want to understand, do you have visibility in your OT networks? Is this something that you currently can do today? Is this something that you need more of? So there's a slide up all for you all to go through. We then have the incident prevention. So, I talked about the Cisco Identity Service Engine being a way to manage that risk. That is through the building of IEC 62443 zones and conduits model. So when I use the term zone and I use the term conduit, they come from 62443. It's an architecture that they use in order to divide by components into their different security groups, and then to put in additional security policies in place so that different groups of different security levels can communicate with each other. So how do I take the visibility and turn it into action? That's with integration into ICE. Incident detection and response is another thing called out by NIS2, Snort IDS sensors. So all of our IDS signatures come from Talos. If you're using the Talos rule set, we also have community rules because Snort is open source. But Talos is the threat intelligence across all of our different security products. So the advantage of that is we have a dedicated team that look at threats every single day. And they are doing it for a wide range of products. So they are looking at how can we better enhance our email security? How can we better enhance our DNS security? How can we better enhance our firewalls? And also how can we better enhance our CyberVision? So it's not just one kind of small set of signatures that we have. It's a see once, detect everywhere solution. So when you see Cisco XDR, CyberVision will tell you one thing about your network, but the more, say, security products you have, XDR is a way to integrate all of those logs together to give you a really good understanding of what is happening in this environment. Vulnerability management, again, we talked about how CyberVision itself will give you that risk score and will show you how vulnerable these devices are. But Cisco also have what's called Cisco Vulnerability Management. It used to be called Kenna. And they have their own risk score, which is based on how those vulnerabilities are being used in the wild. So instead of just your traditional CVSS, they have a more dynamic score based on how active that vulnerability is. And we can do some more kind of dynamic risk scoring based on that if you're using the cloud product, that is. And then they also ask for cyber hygiene. So again, having an understanding of what is on the network allows you to take action to maybe remove dormant devices or clean up some of the protocols that are coming in, turn off some of the services that may be running that are not really needed for your environment. And then if we go into remote access, because CyberVision and what I just showed there was more of an internal within the OT, we need to address, well, the external of the OT. And remote users is something that is always going to happen. I'm sure everyone on this call has to deal with a remote access solution into their network, whether they know about it or not, because if you do not find a way to provide it yourselves, the machine builders will just put it in there and will probably mandate that they need to get in, otherwise they're not going to sell you that machine. So how do you work with them to give them a system that is both secure and you can see what is happening? And NIS2 makes this a priority. So Cisco's solution to this, and again, there's a theme here of an agent built into the hardware. So we have a product called Cisco Secure Equipment Access, SEA, and there's two parts of it. There's the cloud managed part. This is the portal in which remote users access. If you want access to a network, you will access a cloud portal. And then there's an on-prem element, which is the proxy for communication. So if you have an industrial router, an industrial switch, you would put the SCA agent on that device. It will build a WebSocket connection to the cloud, and it becomes the broker for remote access connections. So users go to the cloud and then are proxied down into what is behind that industrial device. And because it's a ZTNA tool, you get things like multi-factor authentication and SSO to make sure that users are who they say they are. You'll get remote user host posture checks so that the device meets a compliance level before you allow them into the network. But from an OT's perspective, and what's really kind of valuable about this tool is you can do time-based access. So you can schedule a maintenance window to say this user can only access this system between this time window. And if they come into this tool outside of that window, or they try to extend the time in any way that they log in 5 minutes before closing, they will just be kicked off the system outside that time window. So you can create your maintenance windows, and it's not an always-on VPN solution. But you can also record all of these sessions and monitor these sessions. So as an admin, if I want to look over the shoulder as a vendor coming into my network, I can view what they are doing in real time. I can terminate their session if I don't like what they're doing, or I can record that session and have it there as a kind of an audit trail tool. But specifically for bringing in vendors and third parties into that OT environment. And there's two ways we want to bring those vendors in. There's the clientless way, which is their laptop doesn't come in because we can give them native kind of protocol support just in the browser itself. If you want to do a simple RDP connection down to an engineer workstation, well, we can just do a one-click kind of browser button, and it opens up a browser window for that RDP session. Same with SSH, same with VNC, same with web access. But one of the kind of unique things about secure equipment access is the ability to do client-based remote access but keeping the same zero trust network access principles of I'm not extending the network to that user, I'm extending application access to that user. And if I have a Rockwell engineer who has Factory Talk sitting on their laptop, and I don't want to maintain Factory Talk within my manufacturing environment, I can open up a connection from their machine to a single PLC on the plant floor, let them do the maintenance they need to do from their laptop after going through all the compliance checks that I mentioned to make sure their laptop is secure, and then close down that session to that PLC once the job is done. They're not on my network, they can't laterally move around the network, they can't port scan or any of these things. We'll confirm who they are, they get access to only the one thing that they need, and then once the time is up, that is it, no longer have access. And I can watch what they're doing at the same time as an administrator. So if we look at those other NIS2 measures that are more specific to remote access, we have the access control policies that they need to make sure that those users have least privilege access to the network. It falls under that supply chain security because part of your supply chain is the maintenance of those machines you're going to get, the aftercare of those machines. How do you make sure that those vendors are coming in securely and they are who they say they are, and it's not an always-on solution that can be monitored? And then they specifically call out multi-factor authentication. I think this is a great thing. Any remote access solution that exists in the world should have multi-factor authentication enabled. So the fact now that that is going to be at compliance is great, and it's something we can also do in secure equipment access, either natively or through your SSO that we can link to. So before I hand it over to Mikhail, I do want to highlight there is also not just a white paper, but we also have then a smaller solution brief for this. So there is resources outside of this call to understand what is it that Cisco do for NIS2, and both links will be available in this presentation. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mikhail.
Thank you, Andy. Let me share my screen. So what we're going to talk about in this section is the requirements needs to give us and the services, the set of services Cisco can help you with to comply with the NIS2 requirements. So when we look at NIS2 from the higher level, right, the main objective and the main target for NIS2 is to really make our network resilient and protected, right? So we don't allow anyone to disrupt our operations and our business, because it will have obviously huge consequences. If you are categorized as an important or a critical infrastructure environment, whenever something happens, it will have consequences not only to you, but also to a wider, probably even economy of the country. That's why one of the things which we need to start with, and one of the most important things which Andy already mentioned, is to do the proper risk analysis, right? Risk analysis means that we need to find our weak points in the network. When we are looking at the weak points, we need to look at 3 levels. So we have the technical level, the operational level, and the organizational level. From the technical level, we need to look at the devices pretty much, what components we use, what solutions we have, and what are their weak points. On the other level, we need to look at the operational, which is pretty much SOC and NOC, which means how we operate the network. Do we have the right processes in place? Do we have the people with the right skills, and so on? At the organizational level, we need to look at the policies, right? Whatever is missing in the policy will have consequences on the operation and will have consequences on the solutions implemented in our environment. So these are the 3 levels which NIS2 is asking us to look at and see if there is anything missing, anything to be changed, anything to be improved, right? So what are the requirements from NIS? On the left-hand side, you will see the requirements, and this is what Andy already mentioned briefly. On the right-hand side, I will show you what kind of services outcomes we provide out of the services which we have. So as we already mentioned, the most important, pretty much, the first one is the risk analysis to find the weak points. The service which we provide and deliver in Cisco is based on the 62443. As we mentioned, 62443, it's the set of standards, which is pretty much the main one to follow if you want to secure properly your OT environment. And we leverage this standard as well, simply not to reinvent the wheel, because the market already deployed a set of regulations, a set of rules, and describes what to do, but it doesn't really say how to do this. And this is where Cisco stepped in and where we provide our experience, our knowledge, and our intellectual properties. So what you're going to get out of this one is a full report describing all the threats, all the vulnerabilities you have in your network, the risk calculation. So you will be clear on what you currently have in your network and what should be our focus point, because usually the risk assessment and the risk analysis serves as an input for all the other things which we are supposed to do in our environment, right? It clearly identifies the weak points. The second requirement is around business continuity and crisis management. We sometimes call it panic mode management, because this is the moment where you get hit. You see the red screen with the money to pay 5 million ransomware, and you need to have clear plan how to answer this, right? What to do in this situation. The services we provide are pretty much around creating playbooks, operational guides, and processes which we can actually practice with you. We have services where we actually sit with you and we go over the process. We try to explain how this works end to end, so you are very clear on what has to be done during a crisis situation. The next requirement is around incident prevention, detection, and response. So how do we detect that something is wrong, right? This is a matter of creating a proper SOC processes, and under the SOC processes, we look also at the tools you have. We look at the people you have in the team, and so on. We verify how they operate. We give you a full report on the capabilities and functions which you have. Also the delta between what is needed versus what you currently have. We look at the segmentation strategy as well. This piece is quite important because if you have a flat network, it will have consequences and it will have impact on the way we detect and respond to incidents, right? Then we look at the IR plans, which is the incident response plan. How you guys handle the situation from the operational perspective. Do you know what and how you should respond? The other service which we provide is also called Tabletop, where we practice with you the incident response and prevention. And the last point which we provide is around outsourcing the DR function. Cisco is able to support you in outsourcing the detection and response. We cooperate with partners like Tele2, which I believe some of our colleagues are on the call as well, where these teams are actually handling the capabilities and functions around this. So if you need any help in your environment to protect and monitor the environment, we cooperate with partners like Tele2 who can actually do this service for you. The next requirement is around vulnerability management. The service we provide is around creating a solution and providing a solutions and processes to detect and manage the vulnerabilities. So both products and service. The next requirement is around supply chain security. So whenever we talk about supply chain, the first thing we need to verify and assess is basically the inventory, the install base of the components which you have from any third-party vendor to verify what are they and what are their potential vulnerabilities and risks. In the report we provide, you will have full information about what are the potential weaknesses of these solutions and what are the mitigation strategy to overcome these limitations. Some of the components will probably have some gaps in the security, and one of the goals is to verify is how we can make the third-party components more secure, either by tweaking the configuration on the component itself, or by implementing some compensation controls around it, right? If it's possible. So the other requirement is around verifying how effective the controls we already have are, right? We can have a lot of controls in our network, but if they are not configured in the right way, if we don't get the most out of those controls, then we might be in trouble. So the way we verify it and the way the service provides the answer to this is by several things. One is the threat modeling, which is kind of similar to pen test. The difference is that pen test mainly focuses on the vulnerabilities, while the threat modeling focuses on simulating the attack pretty much, right? And leveraging the threats and weaknesses in the network. The other service which we provide out of this is the assessment of the controls, and out of this we will give recommendations on what are the things which has to be changed, which has to be improved in order to basically get the maximum out of the controls we have already in the network. The next requirement from NIS2 is to make sure that we have the basic cyber hygiene practices in our teams, right? That not only the controls and the processes are in the right place, but also the employees and our staff is well educated in the security matter. So the service we provide around this is around risk-based phishing campaigns, to verify how people react, to train them and so on. This is also something we do quite often in Cisco as well, right? The next requirement is quite obvious, is around access control. How we control the access? Do we use any multi-factor authentication? How do we manage the assets pretty much, right? It's very important that we don't allow anyone not authorized to enter the network. For this, we need some processes, we need some tools in order to be able to control it. The first one is called zero trust segmentation. Obviously, we would like to limit the impact in the event of unauthorized access, in the event of attack. So segmentation is one of the fundamental things in this case. Also, the remote access control, which we implement with Cisco ICE, for example, or any other tools with the right design in place. The outcome of the service is also the NAC strategy, so network access control, which we provide using any tools pretty much you might have in your network. By the way, pretty much all the services I'm describing and talking about are vendor agnostic. So it doesn't mean that you have to have Cisco solutions in place. We can work pretty much with any kind of vendor, any kind of solution. This is purely capabilities and functions oriented services. PDI is plan, design, implement. So for most, if not all, the Cisco components which we have in our portfolio, we also offer a deployment service. The next one is about cryptography and encryption. So we have data in motion and data at rest. How we secure the data we have in our storage, and how we secure the data which we transfer over the internet. Do we have the right ciphers in place? Right? Is the configuration done in the right way? So it won't be easy to hijack the communication. For this, the services which we provide from Cisco perspective is the customer specific strategy, standards, compliance recommendations. So we look at what you should comply with, what are the recommendations in this, and we try to implement it in your environment. Right? We give you clear guidance how to do this. All right, I think it's time for next poll. We will have a question around how you, what is your biggest challenge in the NIS2 compliance? I will pause for 30 seconds and let you answer this, and then we go for the NIS2 journey. So the first question we always get from our customers where we start talking about NIS2 is basically, okay, so there are the requirements which are pretty much clear, right? We know what's needed by the NIS2. Is where do we start? How do we start basically this journey? And there are two ways. One of the approaches we implement is that if you know where are the weak points and you know where you would like to start and where you have to start, out of those 10 points which we mentioned before, then we go straight to the point and we manage the the solution and the service. So whenever you talk about access controls, whenever you talk about detecting and response, and you know this is the weak point, we can jump straight to the point. Otherwise, we have assessment service which goes over pretty much end to end the controls you have and the services to assess what is the current situation, to baseline the current situation, and based on this, decide what we should be focusing on next. So the assessment service is pretty much the starting point. Based on the assessment service, we identify the gaps and the impact. Once we have all the information on the table, we align with the stakeholders and the decision makers so they understand what is the current situation, what are the implications, how much time we need to overcome it, to fix the problems, what are the resources, what might be the budget behind it, and so on. So they have all the information in one place. Once they give us the go, we start building the transformation plan for the governance of the NIS2. Once the design and the plan is in place, the next step is to execute it, and we have several options. Obviously, we rely and we cooperate with our partners. So if you decide to implement it with our partners, we are more than happy. You also can use our own services from Cisco, or you can deliver it on your own, right? If you have internal resources who can actually leverage the design, you can do it with your resources as well. So there are three options on the table. The sixth option is the continuous monitoring. So whatever we implement in the environment, it has to be maintained and it has to be kept in the right state. So we have resources, and we have services to maintain it as well. Yeah. Right. So the first service, the first point we start with, as I mentioned, is called security architecture assessment. This is the starting point for us in the case where you are not sure where you should start or what should be the priority for you, right? As you see at the bottom, we have three pillars. So there's organizational pillar, the technical and operational pillars. The security architecture assessment goes over all of them pretty much. So at the end, we have a full picture of the situation in your environment. We see end to end the architecture and the solutions, and then we can create a list of prioritized items. So what should be covered first? What is the priority one versus what we can fix later? Obviously, there might be some things which are not in your area of interest, not in scope, or maybe not relevant. We normally tweak the service to fulfill the requirements you have in your network. So how long does it take to start with? The initial scoping is around 24 hours. It depends obviously on the situation, the complexity of the network you have, the scale and so on, but 24 hours more or less is the time we need to properly scope it. Then to deliver the service, to run the interviews, perform all the testing, validations, and so on, and write the report is roughly around one month. So it's 3 to 4 weeks. And at the end, you get a report with all the information about what is the current status with the baselining information, what we have verified in and out with all the details, which will help you then decide what to do next in terms of the NIS2 requirements. Going beyond NIS2, as I mentioned, NIS2 is the bare minimum, right? As the European Commission calls it, this is the minimum you need to do in order to make sure that the environment is secure. But there is way more really to be done. In Cisco, we have created something called OT cybersecurity program, which is pretty much full lifecycle service, starting from the visibility services, right? Because visibility is really the first step. You cannot secure, obviously, things which you don't see. So in the visibility service, in the visibility part, we discover the assets you have, the zones and conduits. We model the assets you have. We identify the traffic in the OT IT network to see what you really have, right? It's basically getting to know the environment. The next step is to look at the benchmarking and assess the environment. So we look at the gap assessment, threat modeling. We assess the vulnerabilities, criticality, and so on. So to see basically what are the weak points in the network. The next point is to look at the strategy, security strategy, and create the OT cybersecurity strategy, the risk mitigation strategy, and compliance requirements. So you might have some specific requirements about your network. So just to give some examples, we do a lot of this for the transportational companies, for power sectors, for production facilities, so every company might have its own requirements, which we take into account when we build the OT security strategy. OT protection is about designing the network monitoring, looking at the network segmentation. As I mentioned, segmentation is one of the fundamental concepts in security, and it has really great impact on the security overall. Just as a side note, we will have another dedicated session for the network segmentation where we will present all the solutions we have in Cisco together with the strategy and how we deliver it. It's going to be delivered in around 3 to 4 weeks. If you are interested in this, I kindly invite you to follow up with me on LinkedIn or email, and I can share the invite with you and the details. So in terms of OT protection, the next one, and quite important, is the secure remote access, how we manage this, how we design it, and so on. This is something Andrew mentioned before as well. And the next one is the threat detection. The next one is cybersecurity management system, right? It's ongoing process around how we detect the vulnerabilities and how we manage the vulnerabilities and how we monitor the vulnerabilities. This is the full program which we deliver to our customers in order to properly manage this. And the last thing is the operations, right? As Cisco, as I mentioned, we don't really provide a managed SOC or managed NOC to operate the OT environment, but from the other side, we provide the processes to our partners, and the partners with cooperation with us can provide the service to you. As I mentioned, Tele2 is one of our trusted partners where we do this kind of work. With this, I would like to hand over back to Eric.
Oops, I'm back. And oops, I need to put it on the full slide mode. Oops. Thank you very much. Michal and Andy. You know what? I feel super pumped. Looking at the capabilities that we have, and at the end of the day, to help, our customer to have the market, to get ready. So we have, the the capabilities to providing you, I mean, the visibility in the OT and the OT environment. Then we had, I mean, the threat intelligence, which is, I mean, the largest threat intelligence that we have on Earth on the private side, which allows us, I mean, to adapt, to act in a sense of, I mean, the blocking, in the isolation, in terms of applying, I mean, the security rules, I mean, firewall rules, IPS rules, doing micro-segmentation, covering as well, I mean, the remote access, which is one of the top, I mean, concern for us in the OT environment, with the zero trust network access. And last but not least, I mean, obviously, I mean, all the services that Michel was just describing. So all in all, I think the spectrum of the processes, the technology, and the services are pretty well advanced to get ready in NIS2 compliances. So in terms of the next step, and actually, I mean, we are getting to the almost at the top of the hour. So we've put some links. Feel free to contact us. I mean, I think there is also a question about in the Slido in terms of how we can contact you if you want to get contact with Cisco. I mean, going a little bit deeper, because in 1 hour it's pretty hard. But I hope, I mean, you get a sense of our capabilities and our innovation around that. And you have all the solution details and obviously the solution and white papers document that we were showing. Without, I'm wishing you, I mean, we have 3 minutes. I think I mean, do we have all the question, I mean, being answered? I saw, I mean, a good set of questions. Are we okay? I mean, Andy and Michel, everything has been answered? Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Good. Thank you very much again, and look forward, I mean, to engaging with you and to helping you getting ready for this very, very important, I mean, regulation coming up to us in the European Union. Thank you. Have a good day.